Okay, I'm in.
Okay, let me make you a presenter.
How have you been? Some of this is going to be a refresher for you.
Okay, you should now have co-host rights, which means you should be able to share your screen.
Perfect. Any chance do you know about the screens? Because I'm plugged in with the HDMI, but I'm not seeing them on the sides.
You may or may not do all this too. So.
No pressure, we're good. Mayor will kick it off for us tonight. So whenever you feel like you're ready, we still have a few more people kind of trickling in, so we're not in a rush. So whenever you're ready, if you need anything from me, let me know.
Yeah, the only thing is, we're on Zoom, good to go. We're just getting on the
Cable's not working. See it come on. When I plug in, plug back in. There it is.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
If it goes out, we'll just
Shane's the new IT guy. I'm stepping down. Yeah, he doesn't have enough work to do, so just add IT, airport, you know. Hey, Mayor, how are you?
Good, David. How are you?
We're on court right now.
Oh, it was like here.
Hey,
You just have access to it.
no.
Happy to have that week off with the school board. Happy to have that week off, a couple weeks off of the school board. Yeah. Not school board, but the committee, the PIC.
Oh, yeah.
Building committee.
Oh, yeah. You're on that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Florida, so I'm missing
It was an interesting meeting. It was good, I learned a lot.
that. Yeah. I think the next meeting, they're gonna go to the district, I mean, the high school.
Yeah, so they're gonna tour the facility.
Yeah. Well, she felt better, I didn't.
Like the speaker quality that is. Yep, perfect.
Who do I need to, Shane, do I turn it over to you once I get a second? Okay, sounds good. We got it on? Well, good evening. Let's go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for being here. At this time, I've talked with Chairman Day, and at this time, I'm going to call to order both the joint meeting of City Council and P&Z. I want to thank everybody for your attendance and all your hard work. Before we begin, I want to address our P&Z committee members in particular. I've said this at council this past Tuesday. I've said it several times. I want to thank you for your service to our community. The work that you guys are doing is not only vital, but the work that y'all are cranking out is some of the finest I've ever seen in my 8.5 years as mayor. And I want to thank you for the attention to detail that you put in each item that comes in, the thoughtfulness, the willingness to work with our developers and come up with solutions while protecting the integrity of our community. I was telling Ms. Day just a moment ago, and council's talked about this, over the next 4 to 5, 6 years are going to be very critical as we're exploding as to whether or not the question, the $1 million question, is answered. And that is, can we maintain our sense of small town feel and community? And I believe with the hard work that you guys are putting in and my colleagues on council are putting in and our whole community, I think we're going to give it a really good hard look and a shot. And I think it can be done through a lot of planning and effort. But I want to thank you guys for that. The work that you do allows council to address big policy concerns, and we take note of everything that you do, and we're really grateful for the service that you do. So I wanted to thank you for that. With that, Shane, I will turn the meeting over to you, and we look forward to this presentation and future great days in Cleburne, Texas.
Well, guys, I'll be very quick. I just, again, want to thank you all for coming here this evening. Thank you for all of the time that you've put into this project so far. I know over the past, excuse me, over the past few months, you've put quite a bit of time in. We've had a few night meetings. We've had all day stakeholder meetings. And so you've given more of your time than you already give to this community. So thank you for that. I would like to note that we do have a few people joining us online this evening. We have Robert Ledlow, who's the chair of our Zoning Board of Adjustment. We have Jeff Patterson with Rain Tree Homes. He is one of our steering committee members, so he's online with us. And then Chris Fuller, our deputy city manager, is joining us remotely as well this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the consultants. Really, what we're looking for tonight, guys, is a thumbs up, a green light, that we've gone through the initial phase of this process, phase 1. We're looking at this diagnostic report tonight. Is this the direction that we want to move forward with this zoning ordinance? Do we get the thumbs up to start phase 2, which will be about a 7-month process where they go through and actually begin writing the zoning ordinance text. That text will be reviewed by staff. It will be reviewed by our steering committee, and many of you are members on that steering committee. And then ultimately we'll come back to you in a joint workshop in the future. And I know I'm stealing some of Dan's thunder, but I just kind of want to walk you through where we are in this process and kind of what we're looking for this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Sefco with Freese and Nichols, and I'll be here to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Shane, and appreciate the introduction by the mayor. We really do appreciate everybody's time. You are volunteers, and we understand your time is very valuable, but we know it's a very important just by way of introduction, this is our team. David Jones is not with us tonight. He's on vacation. To recap, and I realize some of this might be a refresher for a few of you that saw some of the previous presentations, but if you remember, we have already been working, and as Shane said, the primary purpose this evening is to get direction on the diagnostic report. But just by way of introduction, we've been working through, we've had a kickoff, we've had stakeholder meetings, we've had our, many of you were at our open house that was, that we did by Zoom, and so we did that. And really, we're right in the middle of at a process, a point here where tonight we're going to seek your comments and your basic thumbs up. We're not asking for a formal vote, although we do need your consensus if we're on track or off track, because that's going to be our basis for beginning to work on the changes. But forthcoming though, after this is we're going to be working on the draft, and we're going to be working with steering committee. We're going to be working with the staff and putting this draft together. But this diagnostic report is our guide or our template. We're going to try to address those things, so we make sure that we're not trying to do too much or not enough. And so that's important. Oh, I was a little far away. Oh, wait a minute. I'll stand a little closer. Is it coming through a little better? Sorry for the folks at home there. This slide, we've always been showing it, but this is the general process. The last ordinance that Cleburne had was 1996. And like everything else, after a period of time, it does need to be updated. We're going to be looking at not only the ordinance, but also the map. So we're going to be looking at that, but we're going to be able to do a lot of other things as we look at these two documents. We're going to be able to do some what we call housekeeping, changes in state law that we're must comply with, as all cities in Texas must, and among other things that I'm going to run through here. So the diagnostic report that you have before you was distributed, I guess, around October 1st or something like about that time. But this is where we start with as an assessment of where we are, what we think we have, and what we need to change. It identifies the strengths and weaknesses, as well as any recommendations. And I'm going to summarize. Not all recommendations are on the slideshow tonight, but they're all in the report. So as we go through these, I think what I'll do is I'll run through them, and then at the end, I'll allow time for any of you to ask questions, comments, and so you can be taking a few notes as we go along. So, as I mentioned, it's intended to be a policy guide guiding us as we go forward, and any recommendations on feedback. Recommendations are based on feedback, but any feedback you want to give us this evening, that's what we're seeking. So, the findings. Let me just talk a little bit about some of the findings, and as I mentioned, they're not all in here, but they're all in the report, and I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. Your ordinance today is built is designed and built basically on what we call a cumulative zoning ordinance, but that means that all the uses in less intensive use areas are allowed in more intensive uses, and the state of the art, most cities in Texas are moving away from that. So that's one thing. We're going to look at a lot of different areas, including zoning in and around the downtown area and some of your older parts of the community. Also, what we're going to do is you have a comprehensive plan, and in that comprehensive plan, you have a land use plan that provides us some guidance and some vision about what you want to do in certain areas, like maybe along the loop, downtown, and growing areas. And so, although all the districts will not have the same names and terminology, we're going to use that to help guide us on the character and the type of these zoning districts that match up with your vision. The downtown area, as well as some citywide updates, we're going to be looking at the zoning map and coming through and trying to match up the different types of different types of zoning districts to correlate to what's actually on the ground. And I think that will do a lot to try to begin to preserve some of your existing neighborhoods, deal with any spot zoning issues, and similar types of things that we can do when we look at the map. I'm looking back over my shoulder here, so make sure that I hit the same thing. But also, we're going to look at any unused districts. There's a few districts that that you have 4 commercial districts, for example. There are 2 unused residential districts, and we're going to look at those and figure out if we really need those, maybe come up with some new ones, or maybe combine them with other zoning districts. So it's an opportunity to make sure that we're really looking at these, any unused districts that we want to get rid of now, maybe they're not effective or they're obsolete. Now is a good time to look at those and try to make sure that they're meeting market, the right flexibility and such. We also want to add a medium density district. This is something that's been missing in Cleburne, a clear vision for this type of housing, which is things such as duplexes and townhomes, maybe even small apartment types and those things. This is an opportunity to look at that. Now you have two districts. Now you have a Chisholm Trail district. You also have a downtown district that we may want to look at in terms of an overlay district, make sure those have the right requirements and land uses within them. But there's possibility of some other districts that we might want to look at, and we suggested that we look at those in such as a mixed use district, or maybe the depot area, the airport area, and things of that nature. So that's in there as well. Some of the other recommendations and development standards. Currently, you have few design requirements for non-residential / commercial areas. And so the lack of specificity there, pretty much anybody can develop any way that they see fit. But there's some areas that not all areas have to have design guidelines. For example, we may want to have a certain set of design guidelines along the loop, or there might be other areas that are more that are more commercial in nature, and they may not need the types of guidelines that other areas. But that's what zoning is all about, and this is a chance to look at that. In terms of residential, you rely heavily now on planned developments, and this is sort of a symptom that if you have a lot of planned developments, that your zoning ordinance is not doing the job. So you're negotiating all your PDs, but if we can do things like address landscaping or garages or any other kinds of amenities, we have to do building materials a little differently now. But having these predictable standards will hopefully begin to reduce your reliance on all the PDs. You can still have them, and we'll still have a PD section in the ordinance, but maybe we won't have to use them quite as much. Your minimal landscape standards now, we're going to need to take a look at these, but we need to match them up with a level of acceptance within the community. I'm not saying that we have to have an oasis and every business has to have a botanical garden, but we do get enough rain in this part of Texas where we feel that that landscape is a benefit. It seems to improve the look. The look of these corridors is important. As people come through the community, they look at these corridors, and it affects economic development. And like it or not, people formulate their opinion about your community as they drive through these corridors. And so this is one of those standards that we would like to begin to take a look at. And as well as the landscape screening as well, that fits in with that as well. Some of the development standards that we're looking at are all important, and so those are all listed in there. But there are some other things that we want to do as well. Right now, you see up here some of your existing ordinance, but we really have an opportunity to make this user-friendly and make it where now it's really designed to be on your website. So it'll be more visually appealing, it'll be easier to use, and the public, and especially the development community, will, I believe, will enjoy and benefit from this. We're going to have some new formatting in that we can give it a really nice look and feel, add a lot of color to it. We have all this technology on these websites now. So that's sort of a byproduct of all this. Not only the content will be updated, but we're going to make it really user friendly. The site plan process, excuse me, the site plan process, we want to add some requirements and and really make sure the approval process is outlined exactly, so that everybody knows how to move their site plans through the process. And we need to probably even look at, maybe if we do have some specificity there, we might even look at having some of the processes be approved by the staff. Maybe the Planning and Zoning Commission doesn't have to approve all the site plans. The staff can approve those. Maybe only appeals go to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. So things of that nature. Parking. There's a lot of discussion about what the right parking is now. Actually, there's a lot of, the state of the art is that there's a lot of parking being reduced. We're finding that we don't need all the parking that we thought we did. I got to tell you, this is a moving target now with, as we've been looking at some of the COVID-19 results and the need for bricks and mortar. People are shopping online. And the reason we want to look at this is, do we need all this parking? Number one, it just costs the developer more to put this parking in, but there's runoff, there's storm runoff, there's a lot of things that are byproduct on that. But we want to look at the most efficient way and the innovative way to develop these sites. So we probably need to take a look at these parking requirements and see if there's any possible reduction in any of. Yes, sir.
You mentioned COVID. You were talking about changing parking. COVID's not going to impact parking.
Well, it's going to impact we think that there's going to be less bricks and mortar retailing places to be built. And of course, that will, with those come parking requirements. And your parking requirements now may not have to be, if you have a retail come in, we may not need the amount of parking that we had before, just because of that.
I understand that. I just don't want to see us rely too heavily on COVID. We don't know.
Well, I think that's the right comment. None of us really know, but we don't want to make developers build overbuilt. It's just an extra cost. And so we have some standards that we've been using over the last 5 years. I don't know how, you're right, I don't know how COVID-19 fits with all that, but certainly we want to take a look at these and try to make the best call we can on our parking, make sure we're not requiring too much. The accessory buildings are always an interesting part of zoning, and sometimes your existing regulations make it a little challenging, but maybe we can add some images. We can approve some, put some regulations in there that provide guidance on this, but we want to make it clear what is acceptable to the community in terms of these accessory structures and what's not. You have now a sexually oriented business ordinance in your ordinance now, but what most cities are doing on that is really, when we look at that, it's mostly licensing and things like that, things that don't have anything to do really with land use. And so we're suggesting making the sexually oriented business ordinance a standalone ordinance rather than in the zoning ordinance, and maybe only reference the zoning districts that it's allowed in, and maybe the setbacks from churches and things like that that relate to land use. So that's a suggestion. Always with a new ordinance, we want to make sure that our non-conforming standard processes are respectful of existing businesses. As you probably know, the zoning ordinance is not retroactive. It's not one of these ordinances that we can go back make people that have existing businesses to change their existing businesses, but all new businesses plus any existing businesses that expand could be required to conform to the new standards. And we may need to look at how we want to do that, if we want to provide some leniency on existing businesses or just where we want to go on that. But I do think that it is important to try to improve some of the reuse of these existing buildings. We're seeing this all over the Dallas-Fort Worth area, in that building is becoming expensive, and there is a desire for businesses to reuse the existing business that was there before. And what we always like to do is see if there's a chance to improve somewhat on what we have in terms of these existing buildings. Parkland dedication. You don't currently have one now, but most cities are beginning to think about parkland dedication. Now, some of this coming from is that the legislator has limited your tax, your property tax at 3.5%. There's other requirements such as a limitation on land annexation now. So cities are looking at other types of ways that development can begin to help support itself. They're looking at things like impact fees. It's not considered here, but one thing that is considered here could be park dedication fees, either a fee per unit or a dedication of land in lieu of a fee. We can include that discussion now as well. Now, these are some of the highlights of what's in there, and as you've read it, there's more in there. But I think what we wanted to do is take a little poll and see how we do with that. And then we have some wrap-up comments, and then I think we'll leave plenty of time for comments and discussion on any part of the diagnostic report that you have there. So I'm going to let Daniel carry you through how we're going to ask you to do a little, since it's the season for voting, we're going to ask you to do a little polling and voting.
And let me just clarify one thing. We are actually going to take a look at the polling results that we had at our last workshop. So we could sort of go through, and if you weren't able to attend that meeting or to see those results, we're going to go ahead and look at those results right now so you could see that from our last meeting. We did ask at our community workshop to we asked the people in attendance, and then also it was held like this meeting where people could watch it at home. And we asked, how would you want Cleburne to develop? And we gave some options so people could provide their input. Mostly with big city amenities, and that really just means shopping, restaurants, and entertainment, stuff like that for people to go do. B was mostly with rural charm, just open spaces, large setbacks, low density. And we also did have an option for people just to put, they didn't have an opinion at this time. And so the results with that, you could see that we had 60% saying big city amenities and 30% saying rural charm, 10% with no opinion on that. And so that's sort of helping us think when we're drafting and looking at the regulations, well, how do we want these things to look and how will they fit into Cleburne and be unique for people who live here. We also asked what was the more important characteristic in the zoning code. Because when we're talking about zoning, these are regulations that people have to live with. Every piece of land in the city is zoned into a category. So one of the questions that we were asking was, what is more important, or what is the more important characteristics in a zoning code? A, to protect private property values by restricting the negative impacts of neighboring uses, so something next to your property affecting your property. B was to minimize restrictions on land uses, so basically letting just anything develop next to anything else, and that's really just allowing whatever to occur, or also C, no opinion at this time. The results from that were we had 56% saying to restrict negative land uses on properties, and we had about a third saying to minimize restrictions on land use. Moving on from that, we went on to what is the more important aesthetic goal, and we were asking, and we showed these pictures here, more design guidelines. So should there be guidelines in the zoning producing the look and the feel of the building within the legal realm that we can? And then B was just have fewer restrictions, and we can have a more eclectic, type of development on there. And then so the results of that were we had 70% saying more design regulations, so prescribing and putting in there, explaining what the city wants to see as far as development, 30% saying no opinion on that. On the next survey question, we asked, should major corridors and intersections have different development standards than the rest of the city? Because what we were trying to take a look at with this question is, we're going to have some unique parts of the city. Not every part of the city needs to look and feel the same. And so this is one of the things that we were taking a look at. And so the questions that we had, or the responses that we had available were, yes, these areas are important routes and gateways into the city and should be held to a higher standard. The other option was no, the rules should be the same for everyone, everywhere. The results that we had from that, where we had 89%, the people were saying yes, that they agree that there are important, the corridors are important routes and they should be treated as individually as separate areas, not necessarily just one size fits all as far as our zoning regulations would go. Moving on to the fifth question that we asked, which of the following do you consider to be the missing element of Cleburne's housing stock? One of the things when we talk about missing elements, we were asking people, as you looked around the city, you've talked to your neighbors, you've tried to find homes in the city before, that we see that are missing in the community that we need to make sure that the zoning is either encouraging or allowing, and definitely not prohibiting. That's the reason why they're missing. And so we asked, which of the following elements do you consider to be missing? We asked A was affordable single family, B was modern apartments, C was townhomes or medium density, D was estate or large lot residential, E was just having in general a greater variety of options in the city, and then F was other. You can see the results that we had on the screen. 44.5% said large lot estate. That is what was missing on there. We did have 33% saying a greater variety of housing is needed. So those were the two largest responses that we had to that question. Moving on to question 6, we were asking, do commercial developments in Cleburne generally have enough landscaping? Because once again, we heard through the stakeholder feedback and also asking what elements do we see in existing developments that we can build upon or improve upon? What do we want to see the future look like? So landscaping is one of those things that was addressed and asked. And so the options were yes, additional landscaping requirements are necessary, and B was no, there should be additional landscaping required. No, there should be no additional landscaping required by the new ordinance. So if we take a look at our survey results, we had in there that 89% were saying that was no on that. But that's actually backwards on that. So sorry about that on the color there. So I had one issue with that slide, which I thought I fixed on there. All right, so that was in favor of landscaping, just the colors were wrong on the slide there. Number 7, which of the following should be the prevalent? Should be the 2 most prevalent uses along major corridors outside of downtown. Once again, moving out from downtown, we're trying to get the feel of what people thought was appropriate. Once again, we use this input, it's very important. Dan also mentioned in the diagnostic report aligning with the comprehensive plan. So we have different sources of input here, but in this one, we're just asking in general outside of downtown, how should this be? A was commercial and mixed use residential. B was retail restaurants and industrial manufacturing. C was retail restaurants and commercial, and D was mixed density residential and restaurants. And you can see that the results were which one of the following should be the most prevalent uses. We have on there retail and restaurants was 50% and other commercial like that. And then on 25% we have mixed density residential and retail and restaurants. So you can sort of see the theme about options for people to go shop, eat, and dine. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dan to sort of talk about the next steps on where we go. You sure can. It was, we got, oh, sorry. It was it was basically 9 to 10 on there is what we consistently saw. And because what we had on the option was for people to participate here. In the polling results, we passed out clickers for everyone to participate. We also had it where people were able to participate online. So whoever was watching was able to, we had a QR code for them just to scan or the website address where they could go. And it was all real time. So we would have the questions, but our responses were from everyone here in the room. As far as the online, we did not have the online responses on there. So it was the people in the room. Correct. It is a very small sample size. So sort of like what I was saying, it sort of gives us a point to go on and sort of heading this way. But similar to like I was saying when we were talking about aligning with the conference plan, that survey is just one thing that we take a look at, but we're also looking at the comprehensive plan, the comments that we have tonight to try to make a good sense, because when we get to drafting the code, we should have a good, and we feel like we do, but the reason to lay it out this way is so we uncover all the issues so no surprises really come up. Like that was something really important that we needed to know early on, which something still like that can come along, but it's fewer than more often.
To be sure, we could have more, but that's why we need your vote tonight. You don't have to vote, it's not required, but we really need your kind of a thumbs up that we're headed in the right direction. Okay, next steps. We've already had our a lot of our stakeholder interviews, and many of you were at the open house. The diagnostic report was submitted to you, and here we are tonight discussing the diagnostic reports. Okay, so next is pending your thumbs up approval tonight. What we're going to do in November and through the holidays and the first part of the year is draft the ordinance, and we will work with the steering committee and staff as we go through. But that's our next step, and we have not started drafting, but we're hoping to start after tonight. And then eventually in the summer, we have P&Z and council approval and adoption of the new ordinance. So that gives you a general idea. We're hopeful. We hope that COVID-19 doesn't set us back again, but that's what our schedule is right now for the project. So that gives you an idea of where we are. So we'll have plenty of time to look at the code and review it and provide input. For the folks at home and listening in, how to stay engaged. On the screen here is a way for you to look at the web page or call staff. Shane's available, and Danielle, any of the social media outlets as well. So those are ways to stay engaged. We encourage everybody that wants to log in and take a look at those and be able to make comments as they wish. That is generally our presentation. We wanted to leave the most time for your questions regarding the diagnostic report. We'd be glad to talk about any specific one. I know you all have had a chance to look at it, and do you have any questions? But remember, this is not the ordinance. It's just guides us as we create the ordinance. And so if we've hit the mark, tell us. If we think we're about right, there's always a chance to adjust it as you see it in ordinance form. Or if you think it's something we should be wary of and not address it in the way or the manner that we've suggested here, please tell us. So that's what the purpose of this evening is that are we in line with your policy thinking as we take the next step and begin drafting the ordinance? So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you or the Planning and Zoning Commission, however you want to make comments. We'll try to address them between Daniel and I. We'll try to address whatever we can. We'll take notes. And
We have 2 microphones, so we can maybe pass one around. This big room, it's hard to carry the room for a lot of those.
They only provide us with one.
well, you want to just use this one?
You can start with that one. I'll grab it.
Yeah. Well, why don't we just? City manager said he's do it. All right. Well, I tell you what. Why don't we start, and then I'll try to repeat the question the best I can, and then we'll, as soon as we get the other mic, we'll.
So I'll kick it off, and based on the fact that we only got 10 to 20 people on that survey, I would encourage you, if you haven't, to look at the survey data that we had community-wide when we did the comprehensive master plan. When you talk about overall look and feel, I know it wasn't designed specifically for this, but for example, we had a lot of community input when we were looking at where we're going as a community, and really jumped out at me that when we had the comprehensive master plan, a lot of the feedback was we want to maintain that smaller rural feel to our community. So that was in a little bit of disharmony with that one particular statistic that we saw. So I know we should still have a lot of that data available, even though we've got a lot of new staff. So I would encourage you to look at that when you're filtering it through that survey. It may give you a little bit better sampling community-wide.
I don't know if I can repeat all that, but the essence of your direction to us is to go back and look at the input that was received during the creation of the comprehensive plan and use that to inform as much as we can, use our creation of the ordinance. And so is that fair enough? Another question or comment?
I'll do my best to track that down. I'm sure we have that data somewhere.
Yes, sir.
Yes, in your presentation here, you referred to existing businesses, how these zoning changes are affecting them. And I know in the completion process, you will have something laid out for everything going forward. The question I have in my mind is what about existing residents, businesses, that sort of thing, bigger businesses? You refer to that in your deal, and you refer in your deal to the 25% change in their appearance, 50%, 75%, different requirements to take place as a result of that. I'd be interested to hear how other cities have done that. Have you elaborated?
Yes, I I hope everybody heard the last part of your comments there, but the question had to do with existing businesses, homes, and how they relate to the standards. Zoning generally runs with the land, and it's generally not retroactive. Back in the olden days, we used to call it grandfathering, but we can't go back and make people conform their businesses or houses to zoning that's enacted after they have it. But there's things that we can do. For example, if people expand the size of their business, and of course all new businesses, we can require them to conform. We can also add in there, if we wish, certain thresholds that we might feel appropriate. For example, we might say somebody can expand their business 10 or 20% before the new regulations kick in. We can choose to do that. And there's a number of cities that do that. There's some that don't, but there's some that do. Another thing that we've used, and we were mentioning this, we used this in Garland a couple years ago when we did their code. As you all know, Garland's probably 90% built out. And what they had a tremendous request for people coming in using existing buildings that were built in the 60s and 70s, and how we could make an effort to begin to improve the look of those existing businesses that have aged not so gracefully. So we came up with a provision called alternative compliance, that they may not be required to put the newest standards in place, but if they alternatively did something like maybe add some more landscaping or fix up their parking lot or other areas, they could qualify and still get their building permit. It was kind of an administrative, it won't work for changing on land uses and lot size and things like that, but on development standards, we can employ that, give them some relief on that in order to get a better look and feel on some of these existing buildings. So improvement a little bit. So, but to answer your question is, we can set how much we want to make existing buildings comply with new regulations if they make changes. So we can do it 10% or no, or allow them to expand 50%. We've used 50% in some cities, that we can allow them to expand 50%, and then that kicks in.
I think primarily in the downtown area, we tend to have the same buildings in different businesses. Business ceases to operate, and another business comes in and occupies that particular building. Will we be able to apply some updates to that?
Usually the standards run with the land, not the owner. So if there's a change in use, though, if they change the use, we could require that. But generally speaking, if there's just a new owner in the same business, generally you don't require those standards. As these zoning rights, as in all cities, runs with the land, not the owner of the land. You don't get to take your zoning rights. Now, in other states, they have that, but not in Texas. You don't get to take your zoning rights with you and use them however you want. So, yes, ma'am.
Two thoughts. One, Mr. Archer, we've got a lot of existing businesses that have been in town a long time, and where leniency is the word we use. I like that because we want those existing businesses to be enabled to grow. And I'm afraid if we start putting in very restrictive zoning on existing businesses, that we're going to make it so that won't grow and can't grow because they can't afford to. This does come in downtown and in other areas. So I want to make sure that we are taking our existing businesses so that they can expand and can afford to. The other thing was Mr. Archer talking about particularly changing from one business to another. One of the things that happens is you have to get your certificate of occupancy. And when that happens, you have to bring it to certain standards and certain code. That doesn't necessarily deal with the zoning at all, but it does sometimes.
That's the building code. Yeah, the building code. Yeah. Well, thank you for that direction. The short answer is sure, we can do that. It's a policy decision how much we want to make sure new expansions require or must comply with our zoning regulations. And we can discuss with you, they can 50%, if they can expand their building 50% before it kicks in, and those kinds of things. So we'll look at that. Yeah.
I have a question right here. Looking at the total home and code, top of mind, we talked about initially, right here, first looking at this, and how Hillsville 2439 next is.
It does. So we'll have to abide by that. But the thing that we can do is we can have requirements for single family homes in that area. And whatever requirements they have, the manufactured homes have to comply with. So they don't get exempted, but we have to allow them. And so, yes, we are affected by that, but we have some ways to look at that, and we can give you some choices on that and see which way you'd want to go. We'll look at that and discuss those with you in more detail.
So going back to Mr. Archer's question, I think, just so you understand, we have been fighting tooth and nail to breathe life back in some of our downtown buildings. And the hurdle that we've had to overcome is getting them up to standard. It's so costly that a business can't afford to exist. So I think if we give E&Z and council flexibility in that area for prior non-conforming use and carrying from business to business, especially in the downtown district, where we have a lot of older buildings, I think it would be better for the governing body to be able to have some flexibility than to be rigid. I mean, we want to be upgrading it, but every business is a little bit different. And it's easier to get a building back to life if you've got an ongoing business that you can make it. And so having those rigid hard lines, I think you have to get some flexibility to pick that up on a case-by-case basis.
So noted.
Regarding land developments, since I've been on the P&Z for the last 2 months, we've had 4 come before us. I've got a question and a concern. I get it on the land developments that once the developer sells all the homes, he's going to turn it over to an HOA. Either A, the homeowners themselves, or a third party to direct the homeowners. My concern is, I'm all for an HOA, I live in one, but my concern is, and I just don't know, I don't see it addressed here, and I don't know if we can address it. But my concern is, once the developer sells the homes, like we've got a 99 house development out there, and then he's going to have an HOA. He told us Monday that he's going to have a third party run that situation. My concern is if the third party relaxes their restrictions to the homeowners and the homeowners don't care, and then we see that neighborhood go south rather than going north under restrictions. That's my concern. I don't know. I don't have an answer for it, but I some here are in here not to be too restrictive, but at least make the developers aware that it's important that those neighborhoods remain as he sold them, if you get what I'm trying to say. And I know it's up to them, and I know I've heard the developers say it. You know, well, you know, they're gonna monitor themselves, but yeah, they'll monitor themselves, all the houses themselves, then I don't know where it's going from there. And then it destroys the neighborhood if we've got a third party administrator on the HOA, really giving us that. And homeowners, majority of the homeowners either. So that's just a concern. I don't know if there's an answer to it.
Well, the broad answer is, you could look at Houston, and Houston doesn't have zoning, so that's a pretty extreme comparison. But the point is, they've relied on CC&Rs, deed restrictions, which are homeowners associations. And so, with your reliance on PDs, you've leaned on those as being the default enforcer. I think what we're saying is there needs to be some basic guidelines and rules for these, no matter what. We can't impose our, Houston can, they got special legislation that allows them to do that, but you don't. So I guess the point is that we don't want to rely on the deed restrictions to create the community we want, protect our homeowners. We want to have the basic regulations for these subdivisions so that there is a base, there is a point to where they can't go below that. And we can control that with zoning. We can't control their deed restrictions. We can provide some input into how they're created and such. But you're right, we want to make sure our governance is with the zoning, and that's where we have control. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just thinking outside the box.
Now's the time to do that, though. If we're going to think outside the box, now's the time to do it.
We've got 463 homes out here on the other side of the box. You know, some on the line, all HOA are a great deal of it. And 99, and you get all these houses, it requires a lot of people that are in the HOA and also the management. I mean, it's going to run it because homeowners aren't when you get that large development.
Yeah, but the homeowners are paying for it.
Well, I get that, but you get a lot of homeowners that, because I live in a small HOA, about 3/4 of them live here, and the other third, and if the other third leaves, then the whole thing goes. But I know there's some where we can, just some language in here.
Okay.
That allows them to understand that maybe it's just not saying, okay, you got it, and just move on. And I understand that most of the homeowners are going to govern themselves.
Well, one line of thinking is if we had the right standards for our homes, maybe we have less reliance on HOAs. Like you say, it's up to them if they want to do that. But there's been a lot of HOAs over the years go under and can't take on the responsibilities that they were. The problem for Cleburne is you know where those folks are going to go to when they have a problem? You all. And so you may choose to help them or not, but it doesn't fix the problem. And so that's what you're saying. Maybe we'll look at that.
I'm just trying to put some language in here that like I say, I don't have the answer. I don't see it addressed. I just think somewhere it should be addressed about the HOAs. Some kind of language.
All right. We'll look at that. We got it on our list.
Thank you.
Going to residential standards, I'm a little concerned about if we have multiple zoning districts for houses, having districts that allow smaller lots than 7,000 square feet. I know we've seen development pushing into the county in other areas that developers are coming in and building strips of 4,000-foot lots that I don't know if that fits in. I know we've approved several developments through PDs that allow for smaller lots. Kind of the trade-off we've always had is you can have some smaller lots, and you can balance your larger lots and land grants in the city to create green space. Can you explain a little better how the parkland dedication or parkland dedication fee accomplishes that?
Well, it's well known that people want recreation, and the type of recreation is a little different for every community, but in general, neighborhood park, some kind of a neighborhood area, it's been proven that those are assets to the community. Neighborhood, even community parks, trails are popular, and there's community value in providing those, balanced against the city's ability to maintain those. But what the park dedication fee does is doesn't help you with the maintenance, but it does help you with the capital cost to build those. So you can, a lot of cities have done it. It is allowed by law, but you can have a per unit cost, and let's just say you charge $500 per unit. So each unit that comes in would pay that at the time of platting. So before the residents get there, and that money would go to providing a park in that area. It has to be a rational nexus, but what it is that you'd have to spend that money within a certain area of the people that pay it. And then you could, it's kind of like a 401k account. You'd have to get money into it and build it up. But after a period of time, you have enough money to build a park, or the city could go ahead and build a park and then continue to collect the money as new residents come in and pay off bonds or anything like that with it as well. So, but the idea is to provide two things. Number one, there's land that you need, and that's half of it, is getting the land. And the second part is, what do you put on that land? Just the land doesn't do the residents, the citizens, any good. Yet what's on it? Is it a community park with playscapes and those kinds of things that go on it, or swings and picnic areas and barbecue pits and all those things? That all goes on it. You can charge for one or both of those, and that goes into kitty. You do have to have it set up to where it is spent in an area usually within a mile or less of where they're collected. You can do that. You can even do it for community parks over a larger area. So you want to build a big multi-play field with ball fields and soccer fields and all kinds of things. You can do those, and it can be over a larger area. Same principle, though. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So the developer is the one that would pay it at the time.
Yes,
Would we give the option of them dedicating land before paying a fee, or is it?
Well, you would give them an option of giving the land if it was in the right location, but it's your choice, not theirs. In other words, if the land was in kind of the center of this area and it was a good location and it wasn't all in the floodplain and it was good land, you might want to accept the land in lieu of fee. But if it's not, then you'd want the fee and buy the land somewhere else where it's the right location. But that'd be your choice, not the developer's choice. It would not be the developer's choice whether to pay it or not. They're either going to pay the fee or contribute the land in lieu of the fee and get credit for the value of the land towards the fee that they would have. So it's a way to build your park system. A lot of cities have used it for years. I tell you, the first one to use it was College Station back in '84. They started it, and it's been used. Their ordinance went to the Supreme Court, and they said it was legal. And so College Station forged that and all cities in Texas pretty much use that model, that same model to calculate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Recent municipalities, I was sort of thinking, middle of January, the circus returns to Austin. So I'm just curious to read the timeline we have. So we're not really going to know what you're going to be dealing with until middle of June.
I think I have to go first of all, yes, it begins in January. But I don't know, the bills are already being formed, but the deadline for the bills is, y'all may know even better than I, I was thinking it's like April, I don't know. There's a time frame when they file all the bills, proposed, and there's literally 1,000 of them. And they all run through committee, but usually most of them are in effect in September 1. And so they'll be filed in soon after January. Some of them are working on them now. So we won't totally know until they all get filed. But probably before we get our ordinance adopted for Cleburne, we'll at least know if there's, let's just say it's not favorable to cities legislation. There's always some. So we should know by the spring what's a brewing.
I'm interested to what extent you will make recommendations for changing zoning districts. For example, we talked before the meeting about Anglin Street, north of town, where much of it is zone multifamily and primarily single family. Right now, I can see it changing that and a reasonable alternative. But for your mixed use zoning, have you identified an area where you think that might be appropriate, or is that just an idea? What would that
Answer is not yet, but we will.
I think the comprehensive plan following that makes a lot of sense. But I was interested in mixed use, whether you had an idea of that.
There's two things. Number one, we have the right mixed use district, make sure it's got the right ingredients. And then we will bring forward a map, all of Cleburne, that shows the proposed changes for the whole city. Many areas won't change, but some will. I think there is some areas around downtown, some industrial areas. We've looked at it in a preliminary manner. We have not drawn any lines on the map, but we will. And we'll bring back the ordinance and the proposed map for you all to review. And then we'll sit down and explain to you the changes, and then we can talk about those. And then eventually there'll have to be a public hearing for all that. But we're going to work with you all in the committee to come up with those recommendations. But long answer is yes, we will have a district, and then we will have map changes, recommended map changes.
In that same vein, what do you plan on doing for the interim holding district? Are you going to zone out IH interim holding? Are you going to zone that all out? Or
I didn't hear the first part.
Regarding that same topic, what's the plan, or is there a plan for the interim holding district or zoning? Is that going to be zoned out some other use? Is that going to be held as interim holding? Not decided yet?
Not decided yet. We haven't. We have not decided that yet. But that is on our list. Shane's given that on our list to look at.
I want to talk about the SOB ordinance. You're talking about doing away with it.
Mayor, we're just talking about making it a standalone ordinance, taking it out of zoning and then making the SOB ordinance a standalone ordinance. So we're not doing away. We're just taking it we might reference a little of the zoning regulations, but I haven't looked at it in detail, but I just cursory looked at it. Most of it's permitting and.
I understand that. I'm all in favor of shortening it and making it cleaner and easier, but one of the things that I want to make certain we do is that we limit the locations where it can go. You know, I know that was constitutionally, that was a big deal back in the 90s and dealing with that, and I think, you know, that's where a lot of that came from. I want to make certain that we're not just talking about regulating activity wherever it goes in the business, but we limit as much as constitutionally is allowed. In other words, we find a spot somewhere 10 by 10 camping spot in the middle of the industrial park with, 100-foot walls. So we can check that box, so we can be a family friendly. I just want to make certain we're still limiting the location.
We can limit the location, but we have to have a location.
I understand that.
So, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I just want to add one thing, full disclosure, so we are in the process of making an amendment to the SOB ordinance right now, that'll be coming to the. Staff is currently in the process of making a minor amendment to the SOB ordinance at this time. It's going to the Planning and Zoning Commission November 9th, and it will be in front of the city council following that. It's my understanding that the consultants, as part of the scope of this, they're not rewriting that. They won't be touching it. As far as I'm concerned,
Yeah,
I'll defer to Dan on that.
Yeah, all we're doing is what I'm thinking is we leave the SOB ordinance as it is, but anything that relates to location, we need to probably have that correlated to the zoning ordinance, because the zoning ordinance does do location. So that part of it we would need to have in the zoning ordinance, but not the long one. Yeah. That makes sense? Yeah.
Before we say, I get that, just, our predecessors did a really good job of making sure we keep that crap out of our community and state constitution. I just want to make sure we're not inadvertently deviating from that. And then all of a sudden we got, SOP businesses going popping up in different places. And then I know you're on top of it. I just want to make clear that the community standards are still carried forward.
Yes. Yeah, we have talked to Shane about that briefly.
Mayor was talking about parking. I agree with him that we shouldn't make drastic changes based on COVID, but can you provide us some information in this when you're going through the parking part as far as what other cities are doing? Because from my standpoint, which I'm a very small business, so I don't have a lot of contacts to draw on, but from the few contacts that I have, my clients have been seeing that less and less real estate is being rented and used for businesses for about the last 4 or 5 years. And that even before COVID, there was, they were having a harder time renting it out, leasing it out, selling it, as far as foot traffic use.
So because of the not enough parking or too much parking?
I would say we need to reduce parking for the most part, just because I think with Amazon and doing the online shopping, and it seems that that's probably going to be a fairly permanent trend. There just isn't the greatest need, there is not as great a need as there was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yes, I agree that we have some standard parking ratios that we've developed over the recent years. A couple of cities, we just went through a pretty exhaustive redo of their parking requirements. Just finished Sugar Land down there by Houston, going through theirs. But parking is a moving standard, but we're fairly up to date on it, and I think we can give you a good comparison with what some other places are doing. So I mentioned it once before here. I think there's an opportunity to raise the bar a little bit in Cleburne. We'll do a little better. It's like our lives, but I don't want to get it where nobody can. I don't want to bump our knees on the bar, but I don't want to get it where nobody can jump over it either. So that's what y'all are going to help us do. Make sure we hit what's right for Cleburne, and I think there's some improvements we could do. There's some things we could do a little better here, but I guess maybe the term is, I don't want to get carried away with it, and but where we can make improvements. It's not our, I've always kind of used this comparison. I used it before at one of the previous meetings, but it's the zoning ordinance is like this menu in a restaurant. When you go in a restaurant, you want to have the right things to choose from to eat, but you don't have to eat everything on the menu. That's what we want. We want the right things on our menu of land uses and zoning in Cleburne. That doesn't mean everybody that comes into Cleburne gets to have everything on the menu. We just want the right menus, the right districts, the right choices and tools for you all to manage development as it comes in. So that's what we're after. Right, the right choices, the right standards, that's our goal. Not interested in making it exorbitant where everything's gold plated, but we also want good standards yield good quality yields good tax base. It's better for everybody. So, yes, well, but short answer is, again, yes, we'll have some comparisons for you. And so I guess we don't need a vote, Mayor, but we'll take your comments to heart that you just gave us. But is there anything in here that just is way off base? I mean, just tell us if, and here again, we can make adjustments as we look at the ordinance, but this is kind of just our guide to make sure that when we draft this ordinance, we just get it in the ballpark for you all. So okay.
I think Mr. Mann's point of all of this should be ready to adapt in spring, because you never know what's going to happen in Austin springtime every other year. So we know that we may have to be flexible on that and see what happens.
Well,
Since when we started this, we're laying the key foundation for the next several decades. And I do like the sunset provision. So of course, it's future EMD councils to reevaluate it before it all goes away. So put this fire on a little bit.
but it's been 25 years since you did this, and I hate to say it, but it might be another 20 years before you do a comprehensive redo like this. So let's just make the most of it. If there's some thinking out of the box or something, let's try to do that, take most of it. And we're here to help you make sure that from a technical standpoint, you're within the law and what reason and the market, things like that. But if there's an idea and that this coming up is the time to explore it with us, and then we'll try to keep you straight. But if there's an idea, please, now's the time to do it. We need to make the most of this opportunity. So. That's all we have, Mayor.